I know. All right, there we go. That should be better. Great start to the stream. Let's go. Yeah, I'm not sure why that happened, but it should be good now. So let's try that again. Welcome to the stream. June 3rd SAT Q&A. Got questions? I got answers. Let's do this. Thank you all for being here and putting up with my technical difficulties. That's what happens when you have a meeting at 9 a.m. and then you rush out of your meeting to start your stream. Because business, you know, it is what it is. But we're good now. So let me just give a little. Let's see what we got here. All right, we got Abdul Malik. What's up, Sarah? Nikunj. I like seeing you people. ID. What's happening? Zansaya. I'm probably butchering a lot of names here. I'm sorry. James Bond for developing vocabulary. That's an interesting idea. Yeah, read. I always tell people read books. Like it doesn't really matter what you're reading. Read something. Like reading in English, fiction or nonfiction, is good for your brain. It helps you with the test. There's a couple, I'll give a quick speech about why reading is important, okay? First of all, you will see new vocabulary. You will see words that you are not familiar with. Make a note of those. Anytime you see a word that you don't know, go ahead and write it down, and then you can review it later. The other thing, you're going to see a lot of good writing, okay? Any book that you pick up has been rewritten numerous times by the author. It has been edited numerous times by an editor, and it was probably proofread yet again before going to the printer. So like a bunch of people have worked on this text over and over and over. And so what that means is you're going to see a lot of good examples of punctuation and grammar and like word choice. And that helps you. That trains your brain. That makes it easier for you to recognize mistakes on the SAT and to fix some of the, you know, the answers that you got to put in there to choose the right answers. Like for me, it makes it really easy for me to spot like bad comma choices, because I know I've seen so many books, I've read so many things that like I know you wouldn't put a comma there. I can't always explain it, but I know. So please believe me, read. It's good for you. Yeah, Maya, Mohammed, Ahmad, good to see you. She just a friend. Hey, it's cool. I don't judge. Yeah, Shivya, hello. Weirdo Z, stuck at 6'10". Yeah. Hard to say. I mean, you got to look at what questions you're missing. Each person here, there is no one solution for all of you, okay? And that's like a big part of our ethos here at SCORE is like personalizing everything. But you also have to kind of do that yourself. Like you have to look at your mistakes and say, okay, what questions am I screwing up? Am I having more mistakes on vocabulary? Then I need to practice vocabulary. Am I having more mistakes on supporting claims questions? Then I need to maybe review how to do those, like, and practice those more. Like you got to identify what kinds of questions are giving you problems and then work specifically on those things. And I liken it to a sport. You know, if you play a sport, there's a lot of different skills in any given sport. If you play basketball, you got to dribble, you got to shoot, you got to pass. And like all those things require separate practice. So if you're bad at free throws, you need to get on the free throw line and take some free throws. If you're bad at dribbling, you better get out there with a ball and practice every day. Like what will make you a better SAT taker is going to be different from somebody else. So definitely try to figure out what your problems are and how we can fix them, you know? Is June digital SAT going to be easier? How hard is it going to be, Viraj? Daily solutions. Listen, nobody knows. Nobody knows. Don't listen to anybody who tells you that they know, who tells you that it's going to be easier or harder. Nobody knows. Okay? I'm going to tell it to you honestly and straight. Nobody knows. Because, and here's the thing. The new digital SAT combines different questions from like their bank of questions. So I would expect it to be similar. Like I would expect everybody to have more or less the same difficulty on every test, but just with different questions. But there's probably going to be some questions that get recycled from previous tests. I don't think you would see them, to be honest, because the system knows what questions you've seen. Like there's probably a giant pool of like thousands of questions, right? And then it just plucks those questions out and puts them in a test for you. And the person sitting next to you will have a different test. And the person sitting in front of you has a different test. So understand that like the digital SAT is different for everybody in the same room. So even if somebody could tell you like, oh, it's going to be easier, like that might not be true for the person next to you. Like, what's easy for you depends on what you're good at. So don't worry about whether it's going to be easier or harder. Just focus on improving yourself and focus on addressing the questions that you need to do. Feeling nervous? Look, just remember, this doesn't determine your future, okay? This is just one component, and I think it's important to make sure that you also approach it in a confident way. Try to remember that, like, it's just a test. It's not, this isn't like, you know, the Chinese government, like, language test or whatever they do, where it's like, if you don't get a score on this, you're going to go be a farmer and grow rice for the rest of your life. Like, and I could be overgeneralizing, but, like, it's just a test. It's just one component of a much bigger application. So don't stress about it too much. Do your best. Just, you know, try to go in and be confident. Like, there's, you know, it's going to be what it's going to be. Like, there's only so much you can do at this point. We're a couple days away, you know. I see some points about poetry. We could take a look at some poetry questions. Punctuation boundaries, standard English conventions. Yeah, so standard English conventions is always going to be your grammar, right, and your punctuation stuff. That's like the two main things that go in there. And it's important to know where to use your punctuations. We can do some practice with those too. First year in IB diploma, take the test this fall or the spring. I would say take it. You could do both, honestly. You don't have to take it right away, but I would encourage you to take it before you are deep in your second year of IB, because you're going to have so much stuff to study and so many exams, and like, you really want to get this stuff done before that, ideally. So if you get like some vacation time, that's a really good time to take it. All right, worth it to retake a 1520. Utkarsh, congratulations, you got a 1520. No, I mean, look, if you've already paid for it and you're already signed up, go for it. If you feel like you can improve, sure, why not? But like, honestly, 1520, if you have anything over 1500, you can send that anywhere. Trust me. You are not going to get admitted or denied because of 50 or 60 points more. I can tell you that right now. That is not going to be the deciding factor in your application. Instead, I would tell you, start working on essays and things. Like, I see so many people that focus only on the SAT, and then I see their essays and it's like, dude, this isn't a good essay. Like, every school's going to reject you with this essay. Like, this stuff is oftentimes equally important, and in some cases things like essays are more important. You know, I actually, if you followed the videos I made the last few weeks, when I was taking information and putting it into that sheet that you can use to prepare your applications, like, I went through all the different criteria on the common data set, and it's like essays were important at Pitt, but test scores were just considered. Like, literally what you write can be worth much more than 50 points on the SAT. So I would say don't feel like you need to retake it. If you got that stuff, you're good. Elisha, how do you think College Board will make more resources available? The thing is, like, the resources are just more questions. If it's going to be different for everyone, then all we got to do is just practice the different question types. So what I'm hoping they will do is add more official practice tests to, you know, Blue Book and Khan Academy. And I'm sure there will be other companies launching material in the next few months, because Americans are going to have to take the digital SAT next year. And so companies like Kaplan, you know, and Pearson, they're going to publish their own digital SAT stuff probably between August and like October, I guess. And that would give people there a few months to prepare. So I would keep an eye open for those things. There's probably going to be some fresh material from other companies dropping. Be aware that, like, if it's not from one of those very established editorials, there's probably going to be some mistakes. I've had a lot of people sending me exercises from other platforms, including things like Preply and Erica Meltzer and stuff like that. And I see some mistakes on a lot of these things, I'll be honest. Like, I don't trust everything I see on these, to be really truthful with you. Last minute tips for math. I'm sorry, I suck at math. I cannot help you much with math. Know your calculator, I guess. You don't want my math advice, trust me. See, PK, like what you just said, like, don't stress about these third-party things. Like, I think a lot of them are designed to be harder. And here's part of the reason for that, right? Think about what these you know, publications want to do. They want to sell you something, right? They want to sell you prep. They want to sell you a whole book. They want to sell you stuff. So by like giving you a really hard test that has like intentionally confusing answers or like really nitpicky little details, like one word makes this wrong, and like, or like having 4 answers where none of them are really truly correct, but just one is like not that bad. Like that's the kind of stuff I see on a lot of this material. And it's all because it's like, okay, if you get scared, you'll be more likely to pay for a course or pay for a whole book or pay for online classes or something. And like, that's what a lot of these people are trying to do. They intentionally make it harder. I don't think that's like the way to go. I personally don't believe you need a lot of preparation from professionals if you can figure out what your mistakes are and work on them yourself, you know, but this is what, like, this is what they do. You know, I see this all the time. If you're in 11th grade, I would say it's a good time to start preparing now, Shivam. Like this is a good time to start preparing and then think about doing it towards the end of 11th grade. That's kind of a good time. Sada, look, 3.2 GPA, is that going to limit some possibilities? Yes. Is it the end of the world? No. Obviously, everything depends also on how much money your family can spend and, you know, other aspects of your profile. But like 3.2 GPAs get admitted all the time. They're not like, you probably want to choose public schools. You want to choose ones with state in their name, to be honest, because they're going to be a little less selective, but you can do it. You can get into good universities with that. Like, you don't have to panic. If you're feeling stuck, if you're not improving, Sansaya, Faith, I see you saying that. Again, think about the approach. Are you, after you finish practicing, do you look at the kinds of questions that you're making mistakes in? I would write down the number. Like I'd go, okay, I got 3 mistakes in vocab. I got 2 mistakes on sentence completion. And I would go through and do that. And then look at that information, analyze that, say, okay, what do I need to prioritize? Because if you don't practice with purpose, specifically to improve specific things, you're not going to see much improvement. If you're just doing general practice, if you're just going through practice test after practice test or question after question, you'll get better, but like you won't get much better much faster. You have to target specific things. And I tell you this from my experience, like learning Spanish, right? Like when I got to Peru, I barely could speak Spanish. I had almost no Spanish speaking language skills. And I would just make a note of things that I wanted to start improving. I'd be like, okay, let's try to use past tense more. Let me learn my conjugations in past tense. Let me practice that when I go out in the street. Let me try to talk about something in the past and use this. And I would make that like a focus point for like a week. And I would get better much faster at that. If I didn't have that one specific goal to improve that one specific aspect, I would probably just get better slower. So try to have smaller goals. Take your big goal. Okay, I want to get to this score and break that down into smaller goals. And for me, with the SAT, the best way to do that is to say, okay, I want to work on these kinds of questions today. I'm going to analyze how they work and what I have to look for in the answers and like maybe review some of the videos that, you know, Score has put up for you so that you can check out the strategies and like look at how to approach those questions. So that's what I think is kind of the best way to go. Let me see, last minute vocabulary tips. Again, think about how you can like, a couple things that we can talk a little bit about vocabulary. I can show you some examples of maybe some questions there, but I think it's important with vocabulary to just remember that like, don't spend too much time on it. Okay. If you don't know any of the words, try to do process of elimination as much as you can, get to a 50-50, take a guess and move on. Like vocabulary is one of those ones where the longer you look at it, the less likely you are to answer it correctly. If you're staring at the question, you need to move on. Just save yourself time for more things, for other questions. Like, don't stress it. I run into situations where even I'm not 100% sure of the words. I just try to use process of elimination, get between a couple of options, pick one and move on. I'm not going to sit there and stare at it all day. I think that's important to remember. Yeah. Now you get demotivated by the low scores. Look, don't. It's again, it's just a test, guys. It's not the most important thing in the world. You don't have to worry about it too much. Will there be any repetitive questions from Blue Book or Khan Academy? I don't know. Nobody knows. Matrix. That's a good question. I have heard that happened with some people on like March and May, so it's possible. I suspect they're still making more questions though, so I kind of think that's going to be less likely. All right. Yeah. Okay, PK. I'm glad you found that my material's like accurate. I tried really hard to make stuff that felt like the SAT. That was a lot of work. And let's see. I'm trying to scroll through here. We got a lot of stuff. All right. Looking good. We got a lot of people making some improvements. Again, try to focus on those small improvements, right? Even if you maybe don't get the best score. Did you do better on your time? You know, did you, and remember too that there's variations from day to day. It's really important to prepare your mind and your body. Okay. Like I can't stress this enough. Make sure you get a good night's sleep. All right. Wake up early on test day so that you have time to wake up your brain. If you wake up like 45 minutes before the test and rush to the test center, you're not going to have the same performance. Like I would recommend if your test is at 8 a.m., get up at 6. Okay. I know it sucks, but get up early, right? Have some breakfast, get maybe some, I don't know, a little bit of coffee or caffeine in your system if you tolerate it well, right? If not, if it makes you all jittery and nervous, don't do that. But get yourself mentally ready. Wake up. Okay. Because like I've seen this before. I see people that roll in and they still look like, oh, I'm so tired, man. Oh my God. Like if that's you, that's going to affect your performance. And it's just like anything else. If you're going to lift weights, you got to stretch, right? And like every other activity, we do a little bit of preparation to get into that mindset, right? That we want and to get our performance up. And your brain needs a breakfast. It needs a little bit of sugar, something to get you going. Make sure you do that. Okay. And that good night's sleep the night before is going to help you. All right. Because that stuff matters. Don't try to stay up all night studying. It's too late for that. Okay. Friday night, go ahead and just, you know, get your meditation on, find your Zen, maybe watch something on Netflix and go to bed. Okay. Because you want to wake up ready to go and get your body and mind ready to go. That makes a big difference. And I've had people tell me this straight up, people that have had, you know, 2 very different results. And they were like, I just felt different on test day. I felt better. I was good to go. I had a girl who cut her hand the day before the test and it did not go well. And like, I told her, look, that's out of your control. She was doing the paper and pencil, you know, but like she had a nasty gash on her hand and it was like, okay, obviously that's going to affect your performance. Like you need to be mentally and physically ready. Okay. So yeah. How much points for IBDP for good schools? I mean, what's a good school, right? But IBDP, look, 29 to 31 is like the average. So you want to be at least there, right? And go up from there. That 32 to 36 range will get you into a lot of universities. But if you really want to start targeting like top schools, like top 20, top 40, you're going to want at least like 38. Okay. And for like Ivy Leagues and stuff, at least 40. And I can tell you that's not even necessarily a guarantee. I had a girl this year that worked with us. She had a 45 predicted on IB, which is perfect score. Okay. That was her predicted grade. She didn't get into any Ivy League schools. Okay. And she had a really good SAT score. She had a really good profile. Like there's just always some amount of luck in applying to Ivy League and like top tier schools, which is why I don't recommend you make that the focus of your application. I really don't recommend that people just focus on those top schools. There are many other good options that you can find within your budget that are still really good schools that will improve your life. You don't need to get into the top 10 schools in the world to have a good life. And she got into Oxford, fortunately, so she's good. She got into a great school, but still, like, she got rejected from every single Ivy League school that she applied to with a freaking perfect IB score. Like, what more do you want, right? But that's the thing. There's thousands of other people with perfect IB scores. There's thousands of other people with perfect SAT scores. And so, you know, what they're looking for is going to change from year to year. And I have a feeling that if this girl applied every year for 3 years, she probably would get into one. But this year she didn't. She got into Oxford, you know. So you got to remember that, right? There's no guarantees, even with good scores. I think it's really important that you show a lot of maturity and a lot of initiative. Maturity and initiative are huge. Maturity, especially because, you know, they want to see that you can handle life on your own and that you'll be able to perform well in those circumstances and that you're sure of what you want. And you're not just applying to a great school because it's a great school, but that you actually have a really good plan for what you want to do there. And then I think initiative, right? Showing that you have things that you're passionate about and that you go beyond what is available to you. You show that you are willing to make extra effort to do the things that make you feel passion. That's really important. When I look at the people that we've helped to get in, So, all right, taking a look at some of these. Yeah. You're in ninth grade and you're already doing this, man. You're starting early, Solar. That's cool though. But yeah, like you got plenty of time. You're good. No stress. The deadline for the digital SAT is like 2 weeks before the test if you have your own device, if you want to register for the test. If you are borrowing a device from the test center, then it's 1 month in advance. So just keep that in mind for registration purposes. Let's see. Yeah, take admission, top 100 universities, decent score. I mean, again, what's a decent score? It depends on your major. It depends on a lot of things. But like generally speaking, if you're looking at like top 100 schools, anything over a 1,300 is going to look okay for these schools, right? Some might be more selective than others. And it also depends on like how much the university cares about tests. Like Georgetown loves the test. They love the SAT. You better come with like 1,400 plus over there. But then there's other places where it's like 60% of the people presented a test result. 40% are optional. And if you look at their range, it's like between 1,300 and 1,550. Like, so they don't really care. Any test score that kind of falls within the range of people that's admitted is fine for them. Like, again, all they do is look at the score and go, okay. They don't sit there and analyze it. They don't like sit there and go, oh, okay, well, this student has 1,420. This one has 1,400. He must be so much better. Like, they know that that's just margin of error. Like one question between two people doesn't make a difference. So most colleges don't care that much about your score. They like to look at it and they see if it falls within the range that they are looking for, but then they just go tick and move on. They're far more interested in your GPA, your academic rigor, your essays, your letters of recommendation. Like today, those things are more important. So don't stress about, oh, well, what score do I got to get into this college? Because there is none. There is no magic number that gets you into any college. There isn't. So plenty of people get in optional. Plenty of people get in with good SAT scores. Some people get in with low SAT scores, right? It's just one component. So what you need to get in is going to depend on other things in your application and what major you're applying to and stuff like that. Is it possible to increase points by 100 to 200 in a few days? I would never say it's not impossible, but I'm going to say it's unlikely. Maybe you get really lucky, but probably not. Yeah, subject-verb agreement, that's a good one we can do. I'm taking notes, by the way, of some of the things you're asking about. And I also got a request from somebody through WhatsApp today to talk about some punctuation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about punctuation, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that subject-verb agreement topic as well, some things that you mentioned. And we could take a little peek at some poetry stuff too if you want. Yeah, prediction about June curve. I don't think there really is one, man. From what I can tell, it really just depends on which questions you miss. So how much do you need to get into schools like Texas Tech? Texas Tech is actually pretty forgiving, Sanyam. We got a guy in there who had like, I think like 12 something, like 1240. He got into Texas Tech just fine. And he got in-state tuition. Texas Tech can give you in-state tuition as an international student. So definitely check them out. It's a good school. We got a guy who enrolled there. He's going to be going there this year. Yeah. Okay. Let me see here. Do I think, again, Nithya, there is no such thing as an easy SAT or a hard SAT anymore. It's all random chance now because everybody's getting different questions. So whether it's easy or not is going to depend on you. You're the only one taking the test in the center, Mahmoud. That's pretty funny. That's kind of fun. I always like being the only guy at a place. It's kind of entertaining when you're just there by yourself. Yeah, okay. Let me show you what else here. Yeah, so M dash function like a colon, comma. Okay. So if they give you both a colon, comma, and an M dash, there's probably another difference that you need to watch out for. I could show, let's maybe switch to a little example of that too for punctuation. We'll get to that in a second. I'm just trying to go through all the questions here real quick, get a feel for what we got. What do I know about UMich? I've been there many times. I actually made a little video interviewing a student from there on the channel a couple years ago. You can check out. My mom lives like 40 minutes away, so I've been to UMich a bunch of times. Let's see here. What else we got? Which component of application is most important for top universities? They're all really important, but it all starts with your academics. And then I think your personal qualities and character and your essays really are important to top universities. Again, they're looking for a kind of person. They're looking for maturity. They're looking for like those kinds of things. Let's see. Yeah, for Texas, Austin as an international depends on if they give you, scholarship. You can look it up. Look up international tuition UT Austin. Search that. I don't keep all the numbers in my head. Graphs and charts. Yeah, graphs and charts are crappy. We can look at a couple. Again, the key with those is to look at the kind of question it is, and I can show you a couple examples here. 1,300 to 1,400 can totally get you into good U.S. universities with a good scholarship, dude. I've gotten people with full ride scholarships that didn't even have 1,400. Like 13 to 14 is totally acceptable. You can absolutely get scholarships with a 1,390. Like, guys, you can get some scholarships just by having a slightly above average score. Like from 1,100 on, there are scholarships available for you. Okay. Obviously, the more you get, the bigger they can be. But like, if I've had people with 1,120 get scholarships, I've had people with like 1,200 get scholarships. I've had people with 1,300 something get full rides. Like, again, the SAT is not necessarily a guarantee of anything, but some schools will have a scale. Like, they'll tell you if you have this GPA or this SAT score, you get this much. Some schools don't do that. They don't give you that information, but they kind of have an internal scale that they use. Yeah. Can you get a 700 on English if English is your third language? Of course you can. Sure. Yeah. There's nothing stopping you. Yeah. So yeah, Adelina, you can totally get a scholarship with a 1390. Like, don't freak out. You're good. Yeah. See. All right. Your question is really good. Will colleges really treat the digital exactly how they treated the paper? I don't know. That's a good question. It's one of the questions that I'm going to ask in July when I go to the International Association of College Admissions Counseling Conference, YACAC, as we call it. The International ACAC is like, they do this conference every year in July. I'm going to go and I'm going to talk to admissions officers. So if you have questions that you want me to ask admissions officers, then please tell me what they would be, because I want to make videos about that. I'm going to ask a bunch of questions to a bunch of admissions officers and put them together for videos for you so you can get a feel for what they really want. I feel like we don't hear their perspective enough. We hear the perspective of like other students, and a lot of times that information's wrong. And that's kind of why this channel exists, is to give you real information from like real sources. So I got a lot of ideas for things like that. Okay, so, and then some people have mentioned graphs. You can change majors, Usaf. You could actually get enrolled as an undeclared student if you want. You can change majors, but keep in mind, it's not always possible to change to every major. For example, it's really hard to change into something like computer science because they're usually full. Okay. So, all right. I think we got some ideas for some things. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. Let's. All right. So we got some graphs and stuff that we can talk about too. So all right. I want to start off with some of those punctuation questions about the M- in particular. Let's go ahead and get to some of this. I'll show you a little example of this. Right. So one of the things we've got to watch out for, if we have an M-, remember that the M-, right, replaces three things, okay? It can replace comma, it can replace colon, and it can replace parentheses. Now, it's important to remember that it can only replace a comma if it's for extra info, okay? You would not do this if you're making a list, for example. Right? We would only use it for extra info. And then also remember that M-, if you start one in the middle of the sentence, you would also finish one in the middle of the sentence. So like, I don't know, I'll try to make a simple example here. Okay, I'm going to write the sentence and then we'll work with this. All right, so just looking at this example, right? I've already written it with the commas, right? In this case, this here is extra information, right? This is extra info. I'm adding this information about the car. And a good way to test this is, can I delete this clause and still have a complete sentence? The answer here is clearly yes. I could say my car cost $300 to repair. That's a good sentence. So this is extra info, and it is between commas in this case because it's in the middle of the sentence. Now, I could replace this with em dashes, right? I could go one here, and then I would have to use one here. Instead of the commas, we could do that. And that would be perfectly acceptable, right? So let's imagine we got this and we got some answer choices, right? Let's just hypothetically pick some answers, right? So we have an A that's like a comma with the words. I'm not going to rewrite them here, but you get the idea, right? And then like this, right? And then a B that's maybe a comma and a blank and a comma, right? Which we know is already good because I already showed it to you. But, you know, just again, think about the points that I'm trying to make here. If we have C and we have this and we have this, and we have this, and we have D, and maybe we have like this and blah, right? Nothing else. Okay. Now, again, just to illustrate the difference between the em dashes and stuff. A and C would be wrong because if I'm going to use one, I need to use two. Okay, so I would have to have one before and after. So in this case, if you see an em dash and a comma option, pay attention to the punctuation on both sides. Maybe they're trying to trick you here. In this example, I cannot use A or C because I need to use em dashes as a pair, just as I use commas as a pair, right? In this particular instance, right? Now, B would be the best answer here because that's the only one that actually technically works. I would not use a comma after my, or semicolon, sorry, after my car, right? That's one way to look at this. So now, when do I want to use some em dashes here? Let's imagine there's some other situations. Let's go ahead and change this one up a little bit. All right, let me get this stuff out of here and show you what I mean. Let's imagine we have another situation where we're being asked to maybe put, you know, some other things in here. I'm going to get this out of here for a second. All right, I'm going to write this one in with a fill in the blank here. So I have a new problem, blank, which is seriously annoying. In this case, we're combining a couple of ideas. Let's imagine that we say, let's go with, I adopted a cat once and it was pretty annoying, so that's just what came to my mind. These examples are often just made up on the spot, forgive me. All right, we'll go with this. And we'll go with this. And we'll say, okay, let's just take a look at this for a second. Again, we always want to break down our sentences into pieces and parts when we think about what punctuation we want to use. And we also want to remember what em dashes can do. So in this case, I have a new problem. Now, if I have this, generally what I would want to use here is a colon because I've introduced a sort of vague concept. I have introduced something that is undefined. I have said there is a problem, but I have not said what that problem is. And as soon as you read this, your instinct would be to ask, okay, what's the problem? Tell me what it is. And so I would often use a colon here to then explain or define that problem, which in this case is my adopted cat that makes a bunch of noise and knocks over my stuff and, you know, scratches my couch. So it's seriously annoying. Now, I have a new problem. I would like to use a colon here. I would not be able to use some other forms of punctuation, okay? it would not be appropriate to use a semicolon here because semicolons connect independent clauses. And my adopted cat, which is seriously annoying, is not an independent clause. There is not an active verb in that sentence, essentially. So D cannot work. There's no way that I can use D because of the semicolon. Now, because I want to use a colon here, ideally, I wouldn't want to use a comma, right? Because it's like, all right, I have a new problem, comma, my adopted cat. If I just said comma and ended it there, it could work. But really, this is kind of like, this isn't the best way to go. Given the other options that I have, I also wouldn't want to use commas here. So I'm going to say A or B. Now, sorry, knowing that a colon can be replaced with an M dash, both of these options are available. Both of these options are possible, right? But then the question is, what comes after? And now when I have which for extra info, again, this is extra info. I could have just stopped my sentence here, but I didn't. This is extra info. So I'm going to say I need a comma before my extra info. And so B would be correct. Now, the SAT is never going to give you a situation where like they would never do this. Okay, you're never going to see this, where A and B are both equally valid. Okay? You're never going to see this. Because in this case, this M dash could replace this colon, and we both have commas. So A and B are both correct now with this comma here. Right? Let me get rid of that comma, though, and put the word cat back. Right? So in this case, my adopted cat, which is seriously annoying, this wouldn't be the best way to do this. Like I'm adding extra info here, so I should put a comma here. And so A would be wrong, but B would be okay. So anytime you see an M dash, you need to compare to the other answers that you have. You have to take a look carefully and be like, okay, could this be representing a colon? Could this be representing a comma? What might it be representing? And are there any differences on the other side here that I need to pay attention to? Because sometimes they'll trick you that way. They'll hide those commas at the end, and you might go, ooh, a colon fits here, great. But then you don't think about this, and you make a mistake, right? So on that note, like, can there be punctuation like a comma present within extra information? Yes, you could have extra information within extra information. That is possible. It's not that common, to be honest. I wouldn't normally recommend doing that, but you could do that. I could show you an example of that. Like, let me show you what I mean. Hang on, I can't write. All right, this is a good example of just nesting extra information. I would never really write this way for the record, but I just want to illustrate. Actually, let's do this. All right, so here's the thing here. Now, what I'm doing here is just adding extra information. Take a look at like what we're doing here, right? So the who is talking about Joe. Now, at this point, I have a friend named Joe. This is a complete sentence. I could just stop right here. We could move on. But I'm adding some extra information about Joe, that he works at SCORE. This is actually a real person. I just went with a real person. But then I want to add some extra information about SCORE. So I say which, right, comma, which is a counseling company for international students. And then I want to add some extra info about those international students who Joe works with regularly. Like, I can do this. This is technically okay. I'm adding extra information within extra information, essentially, or building on that extra information. And as I keep doing that, I keep using commas and I keep using those WH words. Anytime we're adding extra information, we're going to use WH words. Okay, we're not going to use that. Okay, that is for like critical information. And we don't want to use commas with the word that. Keep that in mind. You won't use commas before the word that almost ever. It's extremely rare. So this is kind of how you would show, right? Show these. Philemon, M dash is for interruption or interjection. That is only used in dialogue and only at the end of dialogue. Like if you were writing dialogue and you want to show that somebody gets cut off, you put an M dash at the end of the dialogue and then start the next dialogue. That doesn't appear in the SAT. I've never seen that on the SAT. So don't worry about that. But you would just do it in dialogue. And I've never seen them actually test that on this. So I don't think that's going to happen. Nikunj's question about the semicolons and commas and where they go is important. We're going to look at that with an example of however. Okay, I'll show you why. So anyway, like I also, okay, one of the questions I saw here was from Vishvaji here about please explain comma rules before which, like when and when not to use commas before which. Here's the thing. I could show you an example. Can you replace it with the word that? That's always a good test, right? Let's look here, for example. Let's change the end of this sentence to give you an example. If I want to say something more important about these international students, that I need to say, you know, like to define which international students we're talking about, right? I could say here, international students that live in Peru. This isn't entirely true. We work with people from all over the world, but just for the sake of illustration, right? In this case, this is not extra information. This is part of the definition of these people. This is a group of people, international students that live in Peru. That's what SCORE does. We primarily work with Peruvians. So like, this is not extra info. This is important information about these international students. So normally we would use the word that to connect that information and extend sort of the definition of international students, right? Now, if I want to give extra information, right, I could also write that sentence just now. Like I could also write this like this, who live in Peru, right? This is okay too. I don't have to use a comma before who because I'm still just defining who these students are. I'm saying who they are. But I could replace who with that and it would be okay. If you can do this, don't use a comma. That's the rule. If you can do this, don't use a comma. Now, if again, I'm adding extra information, right? And usually you'll know it's extra information when the subject changes. Like think back to my first example. I said, who Joe helps with IELTS. I don't know. I don't remember what I originally put, but okay. So here I've changed the subject. So this is now extra information about the students. Like this is no longer defining who these people are. It's just pointing out that Joe helps them with their IELTS. Again, I would not normally write a sentence like this, but in this case, I can't say that it doesn't work. So I have to use who and I have to use the comma because now this is extra information. So that's really the difference here. Like use the that test. Can you put the word that in place of which or who? And if so, you don't use a comma. Generally, I don't see a lot of questions like that on the SAT, though, to be totally honest with you. I'm glad Maharshi liked the series, by the way. Thank you for checking it out. And I'm glad, you're following along. Appreciate that. Okay, so let's talk about the word however, because I think this is a really commonly misunderstood thing, and we need to talk about how this kind of works. All right, I'm going to give some examples here of how we can use this. Remember that sometimes these connectors can be placed as adverbs, and in English, adverbs can kind of go anywhere. They're one of the few things in English that doesn't have a strict space in the sentence, like they don't have an order. So you can move adverbs around. Often they're at the beginning, but they can also be at the end of a sentence, right? So it just depends on where I want to put that word and where the writer chose to use it. All right. So I like to throw out this example. Like I like at restaurants. All right. I like eating at restaurants. Yeah. Okay. Every day. Okay, so I just have 3 sentences right here. All right, I'm going to number these sentences. 1, 2, 3. All right, and I want you to think about how we use the word however and how we use these connectors, right? The word however is typically used for a contrast. It is meant to contrast 2 sentences or 2 clauses, right? Now, there are 2 sentences here that contrast, 2 that sort of don't go together naturally, right? And I want you to look, and by the way, you don't want to know. There is no difference between nevertheless and however. They're the same thing. But you don't use nevertheless at the end of a sentence. You only use it at the start of a sentence, okay? Okay, web developer, robotics, exactly. However, after 1, and now we'll get into what we can do after 2, but I want to show you something here. These are the 2 sentences that contrast, right? There's a contrast here, or there's some sort of disconnect, right? There's a disconnect. Like, if I tell you I like eating at restaurants, you expect me to say maybe some of my favorite restaurants, or say how often I go to restaurants, or like talk about, you know, I don't know, my top 10. Like you would expect me to continue to elaborate on that idea. Instead, I actually go the opposite direction. I say I don't eat out every day. I go negative. And so there's a contrast, there's a disconnect. So what I want to do here is connect these sentences with a word that indicates that there is that disconnect. There is that contrast. This is to prepare the brain to understand that these 2 sentences are, you know, I know that they're not logically like sequential. I know that there's something a little off, right? So what I can do is put the word however here, right? And put a comma. However, I don't eat out every day, period. It's cheaper to cook. This is okay. I can do this. Now, in this case, if I wanted to conjoin sentence 1 and sentence 2, I would turn this period into what punctuation? I think you should know this. What punctuation would go here to connect sentence 1 and 2 if I am starting sentence 2 with however? Right? What would I use? There's only one option. You got it, Nikunj. Exactly. The semicolon. That's the one. Right? So if I put the lovely semicolon right here, then this is all one sentence and this is okay. Right? This works just fine. Right? Now, with however, though, I can be a little sneaky. I can do some things that I wouldn't normally do. I can get creative with however. We can tack it on to the end of a sentence as well and stop there. All right, this is also okay. It still is affecting this clause because that's the one that it's attached to, right? And so I would say, I don't eat out every day, comma, however, and I would end my sentence. And I could still have this semicolon here to connect these 2 sentences, right? So I'm using a comma before however because I'm going to stop the sentence right here. Now, there could be situations where I want to connect this to the next sentence, right? I could arguably go ahead and let's say I did this, right? Let's say I ended this sentence, right? And I wanted to continue the next one. I could say I don't eat out every day, comma, however, and I could change this period to a semicolon and say it's cheaper to cook. Like I could do this. This would be okay, right? So what we got to look for, first of all, is like, remember that however needs to be connected to the clause that contrasts, okay? The clause that contrasts, the one that doesn't follow the logical order is the one that you attach it to. You attach it with a comma, right? This is attached with a comma. You separate independent clauses with a semicolon. So in this case, I have the semicolon after however because I'm connecting 3 and 2. Before, I had the semicolon after clause number 1 and then used a comma to connect it to clause number 2. So just remember, okay, however needs to be attached to whichever sentence or whichever clause is the one that doesn't fit the logic, the one that is out of place. You attach it to that, and then you just got to look, okay, do I need to use a semicolon to attach it to the next one, like, or not? And that's it. That's really all there is to it. That's how they play with you on this, okay? That's what they do. So like to address your question with therefore, right? Generally, you wouldn't see therefore at the end of a sentence. You could. It's unlikely, but if they do throw that out there, again, just analyze, okay, am I attaching this connector to the correct clause? And I attach it to that clause with a comma. So I want to look at the connector, the comma, and the clause that it's connected to and say, okay, does that make sense? Is that where it goes? And then just use a semicolon in the other place, right? If I did this, like let's say I do this wrong, right? I don't eat out every day, semicolon, however, comma, it's cheaper to cook. This doesn't make sense now. This is now broken because I don't eat out every day. It's cheaper to cook. There's a logical connection between those two things. Like it makes sense that those two things are logically connected. I don't eat out every day because it's cheaper to cook. Somebody here said because before, and that's exactly why, right? Like this would be wrong. It doesn't make sense to have however attached to sentence 3 because sentence 3 is logically connected to sentence 2, right? So in this case, I want to make sure that it's connected to sentence 2 because that will establish the contrast between 1 and 2. I hope that makes sense. Like that's the idea with however and stuff. So all your connectors apply the same logic, apply the same method to this. Like I want to make sure it's attached to the right clause. If I flip these two punctuations around, it's completely wrong. It makes no sense. If I keep it this way, I understand that this, however, is telling me that this one contrasts with this one. It always goes kind of in reverse, right? So up until I get to that semicolon or that period, which it could be, right? So that's some things to know about this. Subject-verb agreement is something else that was asked about here. Is there a situation on the SAT where however comes after and before in the same question, multiple choices? Yeah, well then, I mean, the answer would be, again, you got to do this. You got to look at the previous clauses and say, okay, which two clauses, sentence 1 is okay. Sentence 2 is like the contradiction, right? So wherever there's the contradiction, I need to put this with it. Now, they're never going to give you both of these options where you would have this and this. They're never going to give you both that would be correct, okay? So pay attention to the punctuation. If they do that, they're probably messing with the punctuation. There's probably something wrong, okay? Yeah, so let's talk about some of that first and third person. This stuff is really straightforward, guys. It's really, really easy. This is something that you want to pay attention to. I see this happen a lot with the grammar questions. So remember that we have in present tense, right? Present tense always has this rule, right? I, you, we, and they. And remember that they can represent plural. Is like a plural it, right? I can use they for multiple things. That's just going to be the verb in the base form, right? But then if I have a he, she, it's going to get the verb plus the S. Remember that there are those irregular forms like does or has, right? We don't say haves, right? I don't go haves. That doesn't exist, right? They're never going to test you on that, but just, again, we're looking at the S, right? We always want to see an S right here, right? If we're using he, she, or it. So these are singular. These are all singular, right? These are singular. Now, on the test, what they like to do is hide the subject. Oops, sorry. Hitting buttons. Come on. There we go. All right. The majority of people blank. Here's an example. Okay? Here's an example. The majority of people blank to watch TV. Let's look at our options. There's really only two options that I'm going to give you here, but I want you to think about these two options. All right? I'm going to do another one of these while you think. While you think about this, I'm going to write another one. Okay, so let's just start with this first one, right? Okay, now, there's a little bit of a couple things to think about here, right? First of all, right, the majority of people blank to watch TV, right? If I have this sentence, then I'm not looking at people, right? Because of the word of. We're not going to focus on people. People would be like, right? People like to watch TV. But here it says the majority of people. And if we're being completely grammatically correct, and Nick said this best, majority is singular. Technically, the majority likes to do this, right? Technically, this would be correct because majority is singular. Now, one thing, and this is something to point out because this is commonly, misunderstood. Sometimes there are some group words that we often associate as plural, but those are not usually those are more casually done. Like that's more like how we speak. For example, the police, often we will hear people say the police are, because police sort of represents a group of people. And this is what you often hear people say, but this isn't always what is grammatically correct, right? Like truthfully, we should say the police is, a group of people, whatever I want to say about it. But truthfully, that's what's grammatically correct. So keep in mind that what might sound natural and sound right to you is not necessarily the right answer. So, watch the prepositions, like Nick said here. Like if I see this, I know that I should not be looking at people. And a common mistake is you'll go straight to the blank because that's what you're supposed to do. You'll read backwards because that's what you're supposed to do. And you'll see people, you'll go, oh, people like. But then you got to keep going further back until you get to this word. Now, take a look at this here, right? One type of chemical that scientists blank is. Now, I want you to be careful with this because this is how they get you, right? This is how they get you. You might start looking at this. You go to the blank and you say, oh, I got to start reading this way. And you might say, oh, scientists use. Is that right? Well, hang on. Be careful because we have one type of chemical. That sounds like singular, doesn't it? Right? But that doesn't matter because of this. When I get to the word that, I can stop going. Okay? I can stop here and then go back here. Okay? So in this case, the correct answer is A, because scientists use. Scientists is plural. They use a chemical. All right. When I get to the word that, I stop. Okay, because I don't need to keep going. That is allowing me to introduce another subject. It's allowing me to connect a different group of people to this thing. So notice also that there's a clue here in the word is. Is applies to one type of chemical, right? So like one type of chemical is, but this part in the middle that scientists use is separate. So that's what you want to watch out for. I'm glad I blew your mind, Darren. I can tell I think I blew your mind. So yeah, careful with these. Like this is what they try to do. They try to trick you. Okay. They try to hide the subject. Sometimes they're going to set you up. A lot of times I find the questions will start like this first example, and they'll go, oh, you're going to look at people, and then you're going to have to keep going back. Ah, we got you. Ha ha ha. But then the second one, they'll be like, oh, you actually aren't supposed to go all the way back. So if you're going here and saying, ooh, one type, I'm smart, it's uses. No. That scientists use. So this is how they try to sort of make it hard to find the subject that goes with the verb. They deliberately try to hide it or separate it or move it around so that it makes these questions a little bit more difficult. Just keep reading backwards until you don't have to anymore. And I think sometimes, I'm glad. Yeah, the plot twist, right? They get you, man. Also, they like to do this with extra information. Okay, and I think that that's something else to watch out for. Okay. So just this right here. Again, we'll do a nice simple A and B, right? We got all right. Forgive my dyslexia. Okay. So again, a lot of times they will do this. They will add some extra information to sort of separate the subject. If I see the two commas, right? If I see this extra information, I skip all this. None of this is relevant. None of this matters to me right now. Okay? Exactly. You got to believe. Hey, everybody got this one. Exactly. This is good. All right. Just making sure we know. Now, on the real SAT, this extra information will be like 3 freaking lines, and it'll have like a whole bunch of extra crap in it, and it'll take up a bunch of space. And that's just to kind of mess with you, right? Keep going back. If you see a comma before the blank, just jump all the way back to the next one. Okay? Like go all the way back, because you don't need to look at any of this. Anything, if this was like freaking 20 words, you could just skip it all. Okay? Yeah, y'all are starting to clap. I like it. I like it a lot. I like to see that. All right. But yeah, they play in mind games, Faith. That's what they do. They messing with you with the mind games. Now, let's expand on this just a little bit. Let's go with I'm making up a number. 3 billion people. Sure. Whatever. Okay. Now, what I find they often do to make this a little bit more realistic to what you see on the test, right? If I go with 3 options here. So A, you might see all right, so just look at something like this. You might see something like this, right? Don't overthink this, okay? What they like to do is give you 3 options that would work with plural, and then 1 option that works with singular, or vice versa. They'll do the opposite sometimes. Just look for the one that's different, okay? The New World Trade Center would be an it, and so it has is the correct answer, and so C is it. Like, don't even think about it more. What they want you to do is start overthinking it. They want you to be like, oh, wait, do I need the word bin? Oh, my God, I'm not sure. Like, they want to mess with your head. I almost never see them actually test you on, like, what the right grammar tense is. It's always just subject-verb agreement. So I don't even have to worry about anything that comes after this. Like, all these words are irrelevant. I just need to make sure I choose one that matches the subject. So that's it. That's all there is to it, you know. Has been visited. Exactly. C all the way. You got it, right? Two rocks and rock. Okay, apostrophes. Yeah, apostrophes. I'm not sure why the rocks would have apostrophes. I wonder what they were possessing. But just remember, is the word singular or plural, right? Let me show you a quick example. All right. My parents' car's engine exploded. Let's think about this. All right. Let's think about where I would put apostrophes here. I'm going to tell you right now, there's two apostrophes that need to go in this sentence. Okay, there's two. You need two. So the question is where? Where do we put two apostrophes, right? And I know I need to use apostrophes because I have a noun, after a noun, after a noun. In English, anytime you see this situation, right, like I'm going to need to use apostrophes to connect these words, okay? So, and yeah, Virla, the live stream stays up forever, so don't worry. You can watch this later if you got to go to sleep or something, right? All right, now, the question is, how many cars are there and how many parents are there? Now, because engine is singular, and we know that every car has an engine, I don't think this is going to be correct. This would be very strange. This would imply that multiple cars have one engine. And so unless you have manufactured a new kind of vehicle that I have never seen before, I don't think that's correct. So we're going to put this here because it's one car, one engine. That makes sense. Now, the bigger question here is parents. Normally in English, if I say parents, I'm referring to plural. I'm usually referring to two people, right? Most of the time. You could, however, be referring to just one parent, perhaps. Now, normally in English, when you do that, you probably would say father or mother. Like you usually use the specific term. But we could take this in two different ways, right? We could say my parents. Again, the initial word is parents. There are two people, right? My parents' car's engine exploded. What this means is that my parents share a single car and the single engine of that single car exploded. Yeah. Okay. That's how we would do that. Now, if I was referring specifically to one parent, I could do this. If I do this, I'm talking about one parent's cars, right? So just understand that like there are some situations where you could do both, but you need to make sure that you're doing it correctly. This, if it's before the S, is singular, right? If it goes after the S, it's plural. All right, that's the rule. Similarly, I see some people asking about similarly. Well, Zoe Tier is the main one asking about similarly. When you are talking about similar things, like when you're introducing a similar point, or like usually we use that to introduce another reason. Like I might say, oh, there's three reasons for this. First, there's this. Similarly, there's this. Like I want to make sure it's attached to the first idea. It's connected logically to the first idea, right? Do you get to move on? Yes, you do. You can move on to the next module as soon as you are ready. You don't have to wait for the time to expire. I would still encourage you to take your time and check your answers and like make sure that everything is good. Use your time efficiently. Don't just go, oh, cool, I got 10 minutes. I can get out of here early today. Like that's a bad idea. Make sure you actually like take the minute to like, check your answers and stuff. But yeah, if you've checked all your answers, you're happy with all your answers, you've verified that everything has been marked and you are done, go ahead and move on. Go ahead and start the next module or start the math portion, I've seen people asking about vocab questions with unknown words. Again, there is only so much you can do there. I can pull up some examples. Have I seen anyone attended to Stanford? I've got people into Stanford at the postgraduate level. I have not
gotten anybody into Stanford at the undergraduate level at SCORE. I do know somebody from Peru that got into Stanford as an undergraduate. They were able to pay full price. That definitely helped. Specifically means that I'm going to get into more detail. I'm going to give a specific explanation of something. So I usually start with a general phrase and then I go specific, right? Like, let's say, I don't know, my cat gave birth to a litter of kittens, specifically 3 male cats and 2 female cats. Like, I'm giving more specific details about something I just said. That's when I would want to use those. Hey, and I want you to get into Stanford if that's what you want, man. I mean, if that's important to you, good luck with it. Just understand, all those colleges are hard to get into, and it's not anything bad about you. It doesn't mean you're not a good student. It doesn't mean you're not good enough. It just means a lot of people go to Stanford, or a lot of people apply to Stanford. And that's part of the problem with these top colleges is not that those top colleges are really that much better. They're very, very good, but they are not incredibly better than like honestly, if you were to like go Stanford, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, like Texas Tech, like you're not going to see a massive drop in your potential for your future going from like Stanford to Virginia Tech, truthfully. Like, you're still going to get a really good education. You're still going to have the skills you need to get a job. You're still going to be a very successful person. Okay. Like, are there probably some small benefits to going to Stanford? Sure. Are you going to stand out, maybe get a few more calls back when you send your resume out? Sure. But like, nobody on the planet is sitting there starving to death because they didn't go to Stanford. Like, and I can tell you there's probably some people that went to Stanford that didn't turn out successful too. So just remember that. Like, yes, everybody wants to go there. Doesn't necessarily mean it's what you need. All right. Psychedelic. Psychogiraffe. Yeah, I like that name. Uniquely would mean I'm talking about something different. Like, uniquely, I would be pointing out something that is unique to that thing that I was just talking about. Does getting a job affect your college application? Absolutely. Work experience is one of the things that they evaluate. And I think it's an underrated thing to put in your application. A lot of people don't think about work experience. But work experience does give you a lot of maturity. It teaches you to be professional. Like in school, your teachers have to be kind of nice. Like, your teachers aren't allowed to be mean to you completely in this day and age. Your boss, there's no rules, man. You can get a horrible boss that treats you like absolute garbage, and you still got to show up to work, and you still got to do your job. And like, that's an experience you can't get in school, you know? So I think it's good to get. Student in UAE that's homeschooled under an American curriculum in Michigan. I'm glad you appreciate the playlist, Rise. Thank you. And good luck with helping your student out here. That's an interesting scenario. I was homeschooled in Michigan, so I know about that. Yeah. And then let me see here. So I like your point, Nikunj. Exactly. Your dad didn't go to Stanford, but he hires people from Stanford. That's what I'm saying. I got a person who works at SCORE who studies at Harvard. I didn't go to Harvard, but I'm hiring people that do. So, like, I mean, I'll be real. When I saw Harvard on her resume, it got my attention. I'm very happy to have someone who goes to Harvard. But I've also hired people that went to like UNC. I've hired people that didn't go to college at all, you know, because they got the skills. So it's not like it definitely helped her. Yeah, but she also does good work. She's very responsible. Like, if she wasn't those things, I don't care if you went to Harvard. Like, if you can't do the job, I'm going to fire you anyway. Like, I think that's something people don't realize either. Is like, okay, yeah, I see Harvard on your resume, gets my attention, but you still had to impress me in an interview. You still had to show me you could do good work, and you had to be consistent. Because after a couple months, I tried this person out, and I said, okay, I like you. You can work with me. But if everything sucked, I would have said, get out of here. I don't care that you went to Harvard. So it might help you get your foot in the door. It might help you get opportunities, but it's not going to be the thing that, you know, determines your future, man. All right. So let's take a look at some of these other things people's asking about. A lot of people with the vocab. Again, there's not a lot of good answers for vocab, but let me crack open one of my vocab exercises. Maybe I can show you a thing or two. Okay. Because I think that I have some really hard ones in here that I haven't even used in my classes, actually, that might be helpful. Let me take a look. Because I have a handful of extra vocab exercises that I haven't fully used in my courses and stuff that are like tricky. Okay. And maybe I'll find some in here that I don't actually know, or that because I legitimately do English has one of the largest vocabularies of any language in the world, because it's like the bastard child of several other languages. So English is hard. Don't feel bad if you don't know all your words, but like, I'll show you an example of, let's see if I can find some stuff in here. Yeah, this could be kind of useful. All right, let's go to here. All right, so like, let's just say I got some of these vocabulary questions. This is from one of my more like advanced sets that I don't normally use, right? Like, let's just look at this one, right? Okay, the traders were blank in their work, huddled around their terminals in the trading pits. Okay, so I'm assuming that because it's saying the Wall Street hustle was alive and well and the traders were something in their work, they're probably like deeply involved in their work. It says they're trying to outsmart their competitors. So I'm assuming they're being very competitive or very like involved. All right. I'm going to tell you right now, there are words I don't know here. Okay. I mean this 100%. I'm not even making this up for you. That's why I haven't used them in my classes. To the Legend Tyler. The Legend Tyler went pretty hardcore on some of these vocab questions. It was kind of my fault because I told him like, dude, pull some words from GRE. Let's make some hard ones. And then they were like too hard. And yeah. If you're getting anxiety, how do you think I feel? All right. But I can tell you this. I can figure some things out. All right. First of all, I know this word. I know that idle means like you're not doing anything. And I know that is not correct because of what I've seen up here. Apathetic is almost never the right answer because that means you don't care. And usually in the stuff that we read and write, somebody cares about something. Anytime you see an answer that is like apathetic, it's almost always wrong. Now, I don't know what assiduous means. I really don't. I truthfully, I have no idea. Like I could maybe try to analyze the word parts and be like, all right, well, duous is kind of like a way to describe something like, you know, I think of that in other words. I've seen that before. But the acid part, maybe it's like assist. Maybe it's like, you know, like you are trying to help something or make something happen, like assiduous. I really don't know. Aloof, I've heard before. I think it kind of means like you're not interested or just kind of like you think you're too important for something or like very like whatever, man, I don't care. So I don't know, but I've used process of elimination and I'm going to say it's A. Like I know for sure C and D are wrong. I think I have an idea about B that tells me that it's wrong. And then A, like I'm pretty sure that's the only option left. And just I'm trying to think of what I know about this word. And I'm like, all right, well, if I think about the acid part, maybe it's like assistance. Maybe it's like it means you're, you know, being helpful or trying to do the work well. I don't know. Let's see if I'm right. Like, did I get the answer? Yeah, assiduous. So I genuinely, like, I literally want to look this up now and like see what the answer is because I don't know what that is. Showing great care and perseverance. See, I truthfully had no idea. But process of elimination. So that's what you got to do. Like, if you run into words that you just don't know, go with the ones you do first. All right. See if they work. If they do, great. You found it. If not, eliminate. Get yourself between a 50-50. Okay. And take a guess and move on. I'm not going to notice I answered that in about 20 seconds. That's what you have to do also. You cannot sit there and just stare at it forever. What keyboard do I have though? I got a drop control mechanical that I bought and put the switches in and did all that. It's very nice. It's very heavy. Makes very nice clicky noises. Okay, like another one here. All right. This includes even blank who come from all over the world in search of a better life and a brighter future. America's a nation of immigrants. Like, okay, so this is people. This includes blank who. I'm looking for a word that could be people. And I actually can use what I see in the words to figure this out. It's these three words are adjectives. I don't know what munificent is, but I know that magnificent, like I know other words end in iscent, and I know that that means they're adjectives. So I know I don't need these words because I'm looking for a word that could be a person. And I also expect it to be plural because it's talking about immigrants, you know, like I get the impression that it's talking about people, plural. So A must be right. It is. I don't know what a mendicant is either. But I know that these three words I know what opulent is. I know what disadvantaged is. I don't know what this is, but I know it's an adjective. It's got to be this. So like this is how you do it. Like if you don't know some words, you've got to figure out, you know, what other ways you can do to sort of find the answer. And for me, it was like, all right, I know these are adjectives. I need a noun. So can I figure out what part of speech I need? Can I figure out maybe using parts of the word what it might mean? Can I eliminate any answers that I definitely know are wrong, right? Are IV's test optional for fall 2024? Most of them are. Yeah, I think so. I think they all still are. Most of the Ivy League colleges are going to be like that, right? So, yeah, beggars, I guess mendicants is like beggars. Something like that. Somebody said here, Ashish. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. But again, I looked at that S and that kind of gave me a clue. I was like, and the who in the sentence gave me the clue, you know? So yeah. Also, this is a good example also of some things like where there's subtle differences in the words. And so we want to make sure we identify those. Like, all right, French food. We're talking about French food. From the classic French onion soup to the crepes of Brittany, there is a vast variety of blank dishes available. So again, all right, all of these are adjectives. So all of these work. Now, it seems like this is a positive sentence. So I'm going to eliminate negative words like unappetizing. Edible is kind of neutral. I mean, if we're talking about food, all food is supposed to be edible, right? So that would be dumb. And I don't think healthy is where we want to go with this because that sort of changes the topic. So palatable, even if you didn't know what that word meant, I can use process of elimination, right? It should be B. Yeah, it is. Okay. So this is what it is. Like this is how we approach these questions, right? I want to look at what kind of word do I need? And then I want to match the tone sometimes. And sometimes maybe you can tell that a word is negative, even if you don't know what it means. Like I see the and I know it must be bad, but I know that this tone is so far very positive. So I wouldn't want to choose an like I want to choose something, you know, that's a little more like affirmative. Mexico's not without its struggles. Corruption, economic equality, violence is present. The government has been blank in, this should be in, not vin, many of these issues. Okay, so it's because this previous sentence says corruption, I'm assuming they're trying to say that the government has been kind of partially responsible for this. Okay, acquiescent. I know that to acquiesce means to like let somebody else have their way, to sort of like give somebody else what they want. Blithe. I think blithe is kind of like where you're carefree, or I'm not sure. I don't remember. I've seen that in like old literature. Complicit, I think, is like an accomplice, right? Like the accomplice is the person that helps somebody else do something bad. So complicit, complice, like I think that's probably what they're looking for here. Like they're trying to say that the government is sort of responsible for this problem. Complacent would mean they're just chilling, and I don't think that's the point here. So I don't remember the exact definition of this, but I think it's similar to this. And I don't think this is quite right either, because it's not that they're just giving people what they want. It's like for these issues, they're actually part of the problem. I think that because of the connection to the word accomplice, I'm going to pick C, and that's it. Okay. So like, that's what it be. Yeah. So that's how I approach these. Like right now I'm trying to show you how I would approach these if I don't totally know the words. And I want you to see kind of how there are ways to do that. Again, I'm looking for parts of speech. I'm looking for connections to other words that I know. I'm looking for process of elimination wherever possible. And I'm also not going to spend more than 30 or 40 seconds on these questions. I have to keep moving. If I don't do that, I'm going to have a bad time. And Darren, you're welcome, man. I'm very happy that I was able to help you out with like these things. I know there's a lot of people out there that want you to pay for classes and like want you to buy their material and stuff. And my thing is just like, you deserve better than that. I believe that the international student community deserves better. Like, there's a lot of people that want to take advantage of desperation and uncertainty, and it's a great way to make money. Honestly, I could probably be a lot richer if I did things differently, but I'm happy doing what I'm doing, so that's all that matters. Truthfully, like, it's a little frustrating sometimes, like in this business, because like what we do with counseling and stuff, we charge way less than some of these other companies, you know. And there's these big players, like, you know, I don't want to name names because my business partner is a lawyer and he gets upset when I do that, but like ones that are named after colors and definitely, you know, target Ivy League universities, like they'll charge families, you know, $15,000-$20,000 for like something anybody can kind of do. And I know that because we've trained a lot of people to do this, and they do a really good job. And it's like, I charge like less than 10% of what some of these companies charge. And it's just like, why do you need to charge people so much? You know, why do you need to like convince people that it's necessary to pay a ridiculous amount of money for something that isn't actually that complicated? None of these college counseling companies have like a super secret formula. I know that what I do is not that different from what my competitors do, and it's not that different from what the best companies do. We all do the same thing, but the difference is some of us do it honestly and some of us do it exploitatively. I don't know if that's a word, you know. But like for me, it's just all about being real with people and leveling with people and trying to make it possible for more people to get this, you know. This is vocabulary set 6. I actually don't have that in the student materials folder because this one has some problems. As you can see, for some reason, it thinks everything is a link to something. It's all kind of broken, this one. I don't know why. I need to remake this one, so that's why it's not actually in the student materials folder. Also, just because it's way hard for SAT. So that's kind of why I haven't included it, because it's like, this isn't an accurate representation of what the SAT is like. Dual passages, saving time. Yeah, let me pull up some of those. I can show you some paired passages. And I also have charts that I want to get to and a little bit of poetry. I'll show you some things. Let's pull up some, all right. Actually, let me go like with one that I think I've already looked at some of these ones. This could be a good one. All right. So first thing that I want to do with this, damn, there's a mosquito flying around me, man. I don't want to get mosquito bites. They've been bad this year in Peru. There's like a dengue outbreak. Anyway, so what I want to do here is try to figure out the relationship between the passages. That is really important, okay? I need to usually get that information from like the first part and the last part of the paragraph. So if I read here, okay, a long history of intervening in other countries' affairs. I understand that we're talking about the United States military and that the United States military intervenes in other countries' affairs. If I look at the end of this, I can get the other part of this idea. It says we should be working together with these nations instead of trying to control them through force alone. Okay, so this person is not a fan of the United States military being involved in other countries. Like, this approach only destabilizes regions. So this person does not like U.S. military intervention. This guy says the nation needs to focus on its own security, right? And this, at the end, it says, by focusing on strengthening internal protection measures while also maintaining awareness of external dangers, America will be positioned to defend itself now in the future. So I get the impression that this person is more pro-military. So these two people have some opposite points of view. Let's imagine that there is a spectrum, right? There is on one side people who are totally like against the U.S. using its military in other countries. And on the other side, there's people that are okay with that, right? And then there's something in the middle. And the question here is, what would they agree on? So I'm looking for that thing in the middle. Well, what would be in the middle? Well, maybe, okay, supporting the military for defense, but not for interventions. That could be in the middle. Maybe, you know, at least being aware of foreign threats, right? Like, that seems reasonable. We're not saying you have to necessarily send your army into Afghanistan, but like, maybe be aware that there's a problem developing in Afghanistan, right? Those would be like good middle ground options. So if I'm looking for what they would agree on when they have two different points of view, I'm trying to think about what might be a good middle ground, right? And then knowing that the two ends of the spectrum exist, I can eliminate answers already. So agree that the U.S. should invade other countries. This is wrong because passage 1 did not say that. Both would agree diplomacy is more effective than military. I don't know about this because the second guy says focus on security and aware. I don't know. I'm not convinced that this would be the right answer about diplomacy. I'm not sure. I don't feel like this guy is going to be very pro-diplomacy when he talks about security and protection. And like he seems to be worried about the outside threats. Traditional military invention troops are not necessarily the best approach. Okay. I like this because first of all, not necessarily the best. It is a middle ground. It's not an extreme position. Okay. So if I'm looking at two different people with two different points of view and I'm trying to find the middle, I want to pick an answer that feels like it's in the middle. And this is doing that. I like this. And I think that I know the first guy would definitely agree. The second guy probably would because he doesn't say at the end here that we need to exterminate the dangers or like invade and liberate Iraq. Like he says, maintaining awareness of external dangers. So it implies to me that like maybe he's saying we don't need to invade, but we do need to keep an eye on the bad people, right? Writers support using force to influence. This is also wrong. This is exactly why the first guy is upset. So it's got to be C. This is it. Okay. So there we go. You know, that's how I would do it. Again, first part, last part. The first part and last part, paragraphs are like a sandwich. You got the bread on the top and the bread on the bottom, and then you got the meat in the middle. But for the purposes of identifying the sandwich, I only need to see the bread. I know it's a sandwich when I see the bread, okay? Metaphors. Like, I don't need to know exactly what it says in here right now. I just need to get the main idea because I'm just trying to figure out what they would agree on, and I just need to know their positions, and then I need to look at answers that naturally would fit in between those positions and not be too extreme on either side. Done. Easy peasy. To answer your question, Adelina, about summer camps, they do have some benefits, but it depends on what kind of thing you're doing. Like if you're doing it like as an extracurricular activity, sure, go ahead and do summer camps. Like if they're related to your major, if it's like a coding camp for computer science, like that's cool. Do stuff like that. If it's like a university thing, like if it's a summer program at a university, it will help you more at that university, but don't expect it to help you much like with a bunch of other universities. Like most universities don't care if you did a month thing at Yale. Yale does, but like, yeah, you know, it's not the most important thing. All right. So, I mean, Ashish, what I do is I read the first part and last part first, okay, and see what I can get. And if I still can't figure out the answer, then I'll go to the middle. But what I don't want to do is read all of this text because there's just stuff in here that's not going to matter. I only have 4 choices, so I don't need to worry about like every last detail, you know? And so I think that reading the first part and last part helps me get the main ideas quickly, and that helps me save time on these things. Like, okay, if I have this one, what would the author of the second passage believe about the first passage's conclusion? I need to read this before I read this, okay? Like this is going to be the second thing that I read, and this is going to be the first thing that I read. All right, I'm just going to make it yellow. So passage's conclusion. Okay, that's right here. Let's go ahead and do that. And again, I wouldn't normally bother highlighting this on the test for the record. Don't waste your time with the highlighting tool. Anybody telling you to do that is smoking something good. As evidenced by recent reports from UNICEF about child mortality rates due to effective planning measures put into action. Okay, so what they're saying here is China's one-child policy was good because they saw an improvement in child mortality rates after putting this into place. So this person is saying China's one-child policy was good for China, good for kids, reduced the child mortality rates. Now, I need to get the main idea of this one. So I'm going to read first part and last part, right? And let's just go here and do this. Again, I'm just highlighting it for illustration purposes. Global demographic decline is an issue that threatens our global society in the 2020s. Potential strain on economies, global demographic decline carries social ramifications, cultural continuity. Okay, so what I understand this guy is saying is demographic decline. a reducing population will have problems. So what I understand here is that one guy is saying, look how good China's one-child policy is. It reduced child mortality. This other guy is saying, yeah, but it's also going to reduce the total number of people, which could possibly lead to serious societal problems. So knowing that, I can go through the answers. Author of the second passage would dispute the conclusion because it only looked at the short-term impact. This could be true. This could be good because I think this is more of a long-term thing that would happen. This could be a good answer. Author would agree with the conclusion. No, I don't think he's going to just agree with this and implement. This B is going to be wrong. All right. He's not totally in favor. Author believed that implementation was irrelevant for improving living standard. No, that wouldn't be true either. Usually irrelevant is not going to be the right answer. Again, those neutral answers that don't really mean anything, usually they're wrong. All right. Would acknowledge the immediate impact, but note that more serious consequences would eventually arise. This is the right answer. This is 100% it. This is a better version of A. This gives more specific details from the text. So this is the right answer. That's all I had to read. I read this. I looked at this. I went through the answers. Done. Simple as that. All right. Yeah, I'm sorry it's a little difficult. It's kind of hard to squeeze all this stuff in here. But again, just what I want you and again, you can follow along. This is paired passages set 4. This is in the folder. But that's what I'm saying. First part, last part is going to help you a lot in terms of finding the main ideas so that you can answer these questions. I need to know the author of the second passage's main idea, his overall opinion, his perspective. If I can see things from his perspective, then I will be okay. I will be able to understand what he would say about something, right? If you know the perspective of a person, you can then infer what their views are on other things. So I want to just know what perspective they're coming from, and that's the main idea. And so I don't need to read everything here. I could have read all this, and he would have explained all sorts of reasons why this is dangerous, but he also kind of summarizes it here, so I didn't need to read all this. This would have been a waste of my time. And I didn't really need to read all this either. This is unnecessary because I'm looking at the conclusion specifically. So just read what you need. Believe me, read what you need. And yeah, a lot of times, Darren, there's two answers that are okay, but one of them is usually not specific enough or doesn't quite get all the points that it needs to. So watch out for that with paired passages. I find there's a lot of times there's one answer that's feels good, but it's not the right answer. This one, this is true. He would dispute the conclusion because it only looked at the short-term impact. Yeah, he might say, hey, hang on a second. You're only looking at the short term, what about the long term? But at the same time, there's more to this answer. There's more to it than that. And here I can see that this is a good answer because he says he would acknowledge the immediate impact. In this case, he's saying, all right, okay, yeah, it might have been good for child mortality, but more serious consequences will eventually arise. There's going to be other problems that you haven't thought about. And I know that because of what he said here. So this one completes that answer a little bit more, and it's a little more accurate because it mentions China's policies on child mortality rates, which is specifically from that conclusion. That's how you want to approach these. Want to do some poetry? Let's do some poetry. Let me see here. All right, I got a little bit of poetry stuff. Not a lot of poetry stuff. There's only a couple of these, so don't panic about them too much. Let me see. No, this isn't the one I want either. Hang on, let me close this one. I think this one was also, useful. Okay, so we have two different ways of getting poetry questions, okay? There are two styles of poetry questions on the SAT. So I made two different kind of sets here. This one has a little bit of a mix of poetry and prose. This one is all poetry, but in that style. So these are support the claims with lines from the poem. That's what these do. Okay. So The Raven is a narrative poem by Edgar Allan Poe, written in 1845, right? In the poem, Poe alludes to a dead loved one, and the author is teased by a talking raven. Okay, so this is usually what they're going to do here is give you very short text. This is a very short text that is just a quick summary, and this is the claim. This is the claim that we're trying to match, right? They're telling us some detail about this poem. Sometimes I don't understand sometimes why it's so hard to highlight in this program. But anyway, Poe alludes to a dead loved one, and the author is teased by a talking raven. There are two things I need to do here. I need to find lines that do two things. one, allude to a dead loved one. two, teased by a raven. I need those two things. So, looking at this. Books, Sorrow, Lost Lenore. This is the first part, but not the second part. Quaff, oh quaff, this kind of penth, forget this lost Lenore. I don't know what this quaff and nepenthe means, but I see lost Lenore. That's probably the lost loved one because it's got a capital letter. It's a person, and she's lost. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Okay, so there's the raven. That would be the bird, the raven that talks. This is the right answer. Done. It has both the things. That's it. This one only has the raven. This one only has the raven. This is the only one that matches the two things. It's B. It's got to be. There you go. Done. Ozymandias illustrates the claim. Same deal. Shelley wrote the poem after hearing news from English explorers about their return to Egypt. Okay, so I'm looking for something from the poem that connects to this idea of English explorers returning from Egypt. I met a traveler from an antique land. That sounds pretty good. Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. That feels like the right answer. The desert, Egypt, antique land, traveler, English explorers from Egypt. I mean, that seems like the right answer to me. I'm probably going to go with that answer. I could go ahead and look at the others, but I'm pretty confident it's A, and it is. So, like, that's it. It's just that simple. The Road Not Taken is a 1915 poem by Robert Frost. Some literary analysts posit that the poem implies the choices we make do not really matter. All right. This poem is fun because a lot of people interpret it as like, oh, you should take your own path and you should do your own thing and you should choose a way that's different from most people. But there's also a lot of people that think it actually is like saying that there's no difference to where you go. All right. So two roads. Sorry, I could not travel both. Long I stood. Okay. This just says he's thinking about the two roads. That doesn't tell me anything. Took the other, just as fair, perhaps having the better claim. Now, this is saying one road was better than the other. I kept the first for another day. Okay. Knowing how way leads on to way. All right. So, like, he's kind of saying, all right, I took one, but I left the other. And I know that sometimes one can lead you to another anyway. This kind of makes sense. Like, this is saying, like, all right, it doesn't really matter what you choose because one path will take you to another path eventually. So, like, you would get to your destination regardless. I doubted if I should ever come back. Like, I don't need to come back and try the other way because one way leads to the other eventually. Your choices don't matter. The choice is not important. C is the right answer. It is. Okay? So that's all it is. Yes, make a dumb summary. That's a really good way to put it, Darren. Like, yeah, just make a dumb summary. You know? Like, because that's all I'm trying to do here is keep it really simple. So don't get too caught up. If you don't know whether a poem means something literally or metaphorically, I think a lot of times it's metaphorical. Although if it's descriptions, a lot of times it's literal. Like descriptions tend to be literal, right? Like they try to give you a visual. They try to show you a picture. And then they compare somebody to that thing. So the descriptions themselves might be literal, but then how they are applied to like a person or an animal or something else is usually the part that's metaphorical. All right, so that's a couple poetry things. Like in these ones, you get the main idea of the passage and you get a bunch of lines of poetry. With these can be tricky. You want to make sure you read them carefully. What I tell people to do here is pay attention to like the transition words in these texts, okay? So I find those are helpful for me. And also remember that there are a lot of times repeated ideas in different ways, right? So he says, when I have fears that I may cease to be, the fear of death, before something and something else and blah, blah, blah. Like this is all blah, blah, blah. Right here, everything from here on down is blah, blah, blah. I don't need to read this. I can tell. Because he's saying I may cease to be before something else. And when I, like, all right. So again, this goes back to the same idea. I think I may never live to trace. Like he's thinking about this fact that like I could die at any time, man. All right. This is the same idea as this, basically. Right? Just different ways of saying it. Poetry loves to say the same thing in different words multiple times. So what you want to do is kind of like try to use some of these like starting words to help you find out where you can skip, right? And another right? When I feel that I shall never look upon thee more. Okay, this is a little more important. Like now he's thinking about not seeing you. Must be somebody he loves or somebody he really cares about, right? I stand alone and think to love and fame do nothingness do sink. So kind of saying here, like, I guess what I'm getting here is that, like, I'm worried about, like, dying early and not being able to see this person that I love and realize that, like, you know, these things are important, but they all, everything fades away at some point, right? Like, so I kind of see here, like, man will never comprehend the mysteries of the universe is wrong. Like, this is a trick because this is literal. This is like trying to get to this idea of the starred night's face or whatever. Like he's looking at the clouds and imagining that. Yeah, like this is too literal. Him staring in the sky, right? Everything and everyone in the universe is fleeting. Now, I think that is kind of accurate. Like I think to love and fame do nothingness to sink. Like he's sitting there thinking about this stuff until these things kind of fade away. But I'm not sold on this one. I'm not convinced. I might have to stick. Must preserve their legacy through creation. No, he's not talking about preserving his legacy. True love will stand the test of time. This seems like this could be a good answer too, because he does see this idea of like worrying about never being able to see you, right? So I'm kind of torn between B and D at this point. Like I feel like those both have some good answers, right? To me, I'm looking at these lines again. It's kind of hard to say. I think that just because, like, he's not saying that the love is eternal, but rather that it does sink, and that because he's worried more about his own death. I think it's more B than D at this point. I think it's more B than D. But I'm not 100% sure. I'll be honest. I could be wrong here. I haven't looked at this one in a while. And I also can't sit here and think about it forever because I got to move on. All right, I was right. It was B. Good for me. But I got to make a decision eventually. So that's what I did. So, prithee. Prithee is like, excuse me, from back then. Yeah, I pray thee. Pray thee. Like, that's an old way of saying that. Yeah. All right, so less time on charts and data analysis. I know some people have asked about those, and I have those on my notes, so I think that'd be a good one to look at. Definitely check out the videos if you haven't already, or review those again, but I can show you a little bit more. I know I didn't talk about those too much. We can take a look. Let me close some of these out of here. So, charts and graphs. There's two ways to do these questions. Supports the claim and logically completes the text. Before you even think about the charts and the graphs, I want you to think about the fact that these are supporting claims questions, which are a form of the evidence questions, Nishant. I see you've asked about those as well. Again, command of evidence just generally refers to like supporting claims questions. So this is kind of the same thing. And this is a sentence completion exercise. So remember that this is not just a charts and graphs question. This is a sentence completion question. This is a supporting claims question. You should treat it like this first. So anytime I have a supporting claims question, these evidence questions, I have to find the evidence to support the claim. What I want to do is identify the claim. Before I do anything else, I need to know what the claim is. I'm going to look for the person, and I'm going to look for, like, so I see Jill McCormick. I'm looking for the researcher, right? I'm looking for Jill McCormick. I see the name there, and I go, okay, let's see what she says. Believes that dating apps need to focus on specific relationship statuses in order to find growth. Okay. And she also argues that focusing on specific relationship statuses, including less common statuses, could lead to growth. So this kind of repeats that idea with a little more detail. So all I'm going to do now is look at the answers and pick an answer that does these things. So 30% of all U.S. adults have used a dating app. No, this is wrong. I'm looking for specific relationship statuses. The group with the lowest usage rate are married couples. Okay, that is a specific status, but it also doesn't make any freaking sense for there to be a bunch of apps for married couples. This is wrong. Like I wouldn't, yeah, duh. Married people don't use dating apps unless, there's some problems at home. So that's not going to be the right answer. The only group with any growth was the divorced, separated, widow category. Okay, this automatically feels good because these are specific groups and these are less common statuses. Notice that the fact that all three of them are put together means they must be less common. They're adding up to a bigger number, but I'm combining three different groups that are very specific. So, and they are the only group with any growth at all, 1% more. So it must be C. Done. Okay? You cannot find previous DSAT tests, Ashish. They don't exist. Don't trust anybody who tells you they have them. All right? They don't exist. You can't get previous tests because they're probably going to recycle some of those questions in the future. It's not like before where we had people that could illegally copy a test and put it on the internet for people. The digital SAT questions are all unique on every computer. So there is no such thing as the previous DSAT. There's your previous DSAT and there's the previous DSAT of the person next to you. But there is no such thing as a previous test that you can just pull up. All right. So if anybody's trying to sell that to you, don't give them your money. Okay. So again, same thing here. Supports the researcher's claim. What's the researcher's claim? Coulong. Okay, again, I like to look for capital letters because that helps me find the name. He's proposed that creating mechanisms for specific age groups claims there is more than one gender pay gap. It's ineffective to look at the entire female population. He says it would be best to focus on older workers. Okay, so I'm looking for an answer that does not look at the entire female population and instead focuses on older workers. So, this one focuses on younger workers, so that's not going to be correct. Comparing all female workers, that's not going to be correct because he just said not to do that. Female workers, again, this one focuses on the wrong group. Okay, so this one here says okay, but hang on. All right, this one's comparing this one to the rest. And if I look at these charts, that means that the older workers are everybody above 34. And he does say that it should focus more on older workers. So this is correct. It's got to be D. It's got to be D. Because he's saying this one compared to all, we don't have the data for all, but we can infer that if we have data for these two young groups, all would be all over here, and we would go with that. D. Done. That's it. That's all I got to do. Just match the claim. Okay? Same thing with these other ones. Like, if I have this here, right? Which most logically completes the text? This is a sentence completion question before anything else, okay? So complete the freaking sentence. It says here, Representative Joanne Kelwick notes that this issue is most egregious in the Senate, comma, where. So I need an answer that talks about this issue, which I think is this minority representation. It says this number is still quite low. So women minority representation in the Senate in particular. So I just want to look for an answer that talks about the Senate and gives me the right information. Okay, only 2 Indian and Native American senators. That is true, but now I need to look at these dots or these squares. And this here says 2, but these 2 are in the House. They are not in the Senate. I can see that there are only 3 in the Senate. 1, 2, 3. Nothing else in the Senate. So I'm looking for an answer that probably tells me that. So this one's definitely wrong because it's talking about 5 representatives and I'm looking for 3. This one's wrong because it's not about the Senate. There are only 3 minority representatives. Yep, this is it. This is your right answer because it says 3. That's literally what's in the chart and that's focused on the Senate. Done. That's it. Okay. So I'm completing this sentence. I need to focus on this sentence. I do not want to waste my time reading all the rest. I don't need to worry about answers that don't do this. Just focus on the sentence. So that's how you make these charts and graphs questions super easy peasy, everybody. Okay? Just remember, like, they are either supporting claims or sentence completion questions. Treat them as such. I don't look at the data until I look at the paragraph and the answers. and I use the data to confirm the answers. Here, I said, ooh, is that true? Oh, it is, but not for the Senate. So I used the data to confirm that this answer was incorrect. And then I already knew that this answer was incorrect because of what I just looked at. And I knew that this was the right answer. Done. Easy as that. Okay? So that's pretty much it. Sharon, I spent a good bit of time on punctuation at the beginning of the class here today, so I'm probably, I don't know, if you have a specific punctuation you want me to look at, we could take a look at it, but like, we talked a lot about M-dashes, semicolons, punctuating with transition words, like we did a lot of that at the very beginning here. So, let's see. Yeah, people have asked about transitions, Adelina. I mean, it's kind of like what we talked about before. There's not a whole lot more to say about transitions. You just got to know your words and choose the right ones. It's pretty straightforward. Like I have this one vocab set that does a lot of transition words. Wait, no, that's only those definitions. Let me pull up these. I mean, this is basically it, right? Best, like we can go through these really fast, but like, again, I'm just looking for the connection between two sentences. So anytime I see best transition, I'm looking for, okay, the blank is here. I need to look at the sentence before and the sentence after. This is all you need to read. Okay. All right. So exercising can produce stress, blah, 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 blah. All right. So it's adding more benefits. It's explaining more things that come from this. It can reduce stress, improve sleep, strengthen bones and muscles. So I guess like it helps to protect chronic diseases. Consequently, it's got to be consequently. That's the first answer. Yeah, if you sleep better and reduce stress, then you're going to have less diseases like heart disease. Perfect. Done. Right? Provides the best transition. Okay. The world is constantly changing, and with those changes come new opportunities. Blank. It's important to stay open-minded. Okay. So changes, new opportunities. There's a logical connection between these things. Because of this, I should also do this. Therefore, yeah, there it is right there. Therefore. Right? Because this is a logical conclusion. Like if there's change and change means opportunity, then you need to stay open-minded. D must be right. There you go. Done. Why would I say however here? Like I see you, Ashish. I see what you deleted. Why would I want to say however? There's no difference. Why would I say however to stay open-minded when I just told you that we had new opportunities? Remember what these words are for. I have two words that do a contrast, and then I got one more that kind of like goes into more detail. Now, furthermore would work if I was giving more information about those opportunities, right? You know, furthermore, the people that sees those opportunities will be more successful in life, or another reason about the changes. Furthermore, you know, adapting to changes will make you a more resilient and happy person. Like in this case, I'm trying to look at the direct consequence of this, like the direct result. If change equals new opportunity, then you should stay open-minded so that you can embrace the change, right? All right. Same thing here. Many people are intimidated by the thought of public speaking. It's an important skill to have. Blank. There are a few simple steps that you can take to help you lessen the fear. Okay. So I'm looking for, again, this is a logical follow-up. I'm looking at subsequently probably here. Let's take a look. Meanwhile doesn't make sense because that would be like two different actions happening at the same time. Subsequently makes sense because like, you've just told me that it's important and now you're telling me how to do it. So there's like, this is the subsequent thing. Like, okay, it's important. Subsequently, there are a few simple steps you can take. That feels like that's probably the right answer. However, doesn't really work because we just did a contrast with although at the beginning. So I wouldn't want to say, however, there are a few simple steps. Like, although maybe that does work because it says intimidated. Hang on, I may have overlooked something here. Although many people are intimidated, it's important skill to have. However, there are a few simple steps you can take to help you lessen your fear. Yeah, actually, this is the connection. There it is. Hang on, look at this. So this is why it's important to keep reading the sentence because here, I up until this point, I was thinking subsequently. Now that I'm looking at this and seeing lessen your fear, intimidated by, this is now kind of trying to help me feel better. It's saying, hey, look, we know that, look, it is important. I know a lot of people are scared. However, there are some things you can do to reduce your fear. I think that now that the fear connection is there, it must be however, I think. And honestly, I think subsequently and consequently are a little bit too similar to each other in this case for either one to be correct. So, however, yeah. So make sure you read the whole sentence. I almost made a mistake here by just kind of stopping I didn't really look at this first sentence in enough detail, and I didn't read all the way through the second sentence. Make sure you read all of the first sentence, all of the second sentence, or else you might rush into a bad judgment like I almost did. Okay? So, yeah. Here, let's do one more. In spite of difficult circumstances, many people have found ways to be successful. Something else, they demonstrate the hard work and determination. Okay, so I think that this is like a logical continuation. Many people have found ways to be successful, and those people demonstrate hard work and determination can lead. All right, so this is kind of like a furthermore, I think, out of these options, because like I don't see a contrast for nevertheless or whereas. Therefore would be like, I don't see the exact logical conclusion of that. Therefore, they demonstrate. Maybe people found ways to be successful. Like, I feel like this is another aspect, an additional point. I'm going to go with furthermore. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So this is what I want to do. Just read the first sentence, read the second sentence, try to figure out what is the logical relationship between these two sentences, and then choose the connector that does that. That's all you got to do. You do have to know your connectors. You have to know the small differences. Like, you know, if it's a, like, therefore would work. And another good trick sometimes if you're not sure is think, okay, if it was this connector, how would the next sentence sound? Like, in spite of difficult circumstances, many people have found ways to be successful. Therefore, it's important not to give up when you are facing a challenge, because you too can succeed. That would be a logical follow-up with therefore. But that's not what I see here. I see this, again, it's still talking about the same people. That can also be a clue. Many people, they. So I'm adding another point about this, about these people. Something else that they do. And so furthermore is a better fit because it's not exactly a logical continuation, but just a different idea about the same thing. This class will always be available on the internet. Yes, I'm not going to take anything down. Don't worry. I keep it up here. A lot of people watch these, and I'm, you know, this is what generates most of my watch time on YouTube. So yeah, I'm not going to get rid of these. You can come back later if you want. All right. So anyway, this is more or less what I got right now. So I got to be getting going because I actually got other things to do. I got places to be in a little bit. It's been about 2 hours, which is more or less what I had in mind for today. I think we covered a lot of good stuff. As always, if you have other questions, feel free to leave comments on the videos. I really appreciate everybody watching this stuff and checking it out. And I hope you get a really good result on your June 3rd SAT. And then from there, we really want to start focusing on our application process. So I'm going to be publishing a couple more videos soon about like some colleges that I visited in Spain. And then I'm going to be talking a lot about the application process. We're going to start talking about essays. We're going to talk about letters of recommendation, you know, everything that you need to get your application ready. If you've seen the last few videos, I talked a lot about the way to get your research organized. And it's really important that you're doing that right now. You need to analyze your college list and make sure you're choosing universities that are a good fit for you, not just the best or the ones that you want the most. Like, choose universities that actually want people like you. If you don't do that, you're more likely going to get rejected. So take your time, research your colleges, make smart, informed decisions using the data. And then when you've done that, you'll know what you need to get together for your applications. We're going to start talking about those deliverables, all those things that you need to bring to the application. When I go to the US in July, I'm going to make a bunch of videos too, asking admissions officers about their perspective on these things. So I'm going to get some real legitimate sources for you so that you can hear it from real people that actually would look at your applications. And then later this year, I'm going to be taking a trip to England. So we're going to have some university videos from England too later this year, which is going to be fun. That's a whole new thing. So listen, Adelina, if you get a 1450, I don't think I'm 40% of the result. I'll take 10% of the credit at most. At the end of the day, you all get the results that you deserve because of your work. I am happy to be a small part of your success, but let it be known, I don't take credit for your success, and you should. You are the ones that make it happen. That's one of the reasons I don't even advertise SAT scores on like our Instagram or on the channel. Cause like, have people in my class gotten 1,500 plus? Yes, they have. Do I believe everyone's going to do that just because they take class with me? No. That's why I don't put that out there, because I think it's very misleading to suggest to people, oh, just take this class and you'll get 1510. Like my boy did. Like, that's him. That's his result because of his work. That had nothing to do with me. That had nothing to do with Pili. That had nothing to do with Eduardo, in my opinion. And I would not sit there and try to convince people that if you come with me, like that's what that marketing does. It's subtly telling you, hey, if you pay for my course, you're going to get the best score possible. I don't agree with that. At the end of the day, it's your results from your work and your preparation. If my stuff has helped you with that, then I'm very happy. That's what I want, but just understand that's what it is. Philemon, best way to get in touch with me is WhatsApp, to be honest with you. Like if you email me, yeah, I'll probably catch it, but I don't always check my email all the time while I have the WhatsApp open all the time. So feel free to go there. Yeah, Ahmed, download Adobe Reader or just Google Chrome. Like I literally can open any of these PDFs in Chrome. I'll show you right now. I'll show you just so you can see that I'm not crazy, right? Here, look, like Chrome, the button works. 1 million people ask me how to get the answers to the English part. I thought I was smart by doing this button. I was not smart. I should have just put the answers at the end on a separate page or something. I'm stupid. I put this button because I thought it was cool. And then 1 billion people are like, how do I get the answers? And it's like, dude, I've answered this question 400 times. And like, I thought I was smart. I thought this button was so cool. I was so proud of myself when I made this button. I had no idea that it was going to become like this constant thing that I had to always explain. It works, yo. It works. But for those who figured it out, think of it as a test. All right. Good for you. All right. Thank you, Darren. I appreciate the appreciation because this button has been like a curse since I did it. I was like, this is so genius. I've programmed these buttons and y'all should see my workflow. I had this like amazing workflow for these materials. Like I use ChatGPT to generate the paragraphs straight up. And then I would ask ChatGPT the question and then I would modify the answers and stuff to kind of get it just right. And then I would put that into an Excel and then that Excel went to an InDesign template. And then I could just hit one button and it would spit out all the PDFs for a given question type instantly. I didn't have to make them one by one. And then like I would put them all together into the folder and check them. It was this wonderful workflow and the button was automated and everything. And I was so proud of myself. And then I've just had to explain it to like 4 million people. So lesson learned, sometimes simpler is better. Yeah, so that's funny. But yeah, I know the button's pretty cool when it works, but I realized like I didn't think about how so many people would just go into Google Drive, open it up and try to click it and it wouldn't work. Like I just didn't think about that at all. I didn't even contemplate that when I made it. So it's kind of funny how that goes. But if you figured it out for yourself, good for you. Again, Nishant, what's the best college, dude? Give me an example. Like that. There's 4,000 universities in the U.S. I think hundreds of them are excellent. I don't think that, like there's the best college, best score for an average student. Like, I think you're giving this too much priority here, to be honest with you. I think you're overthinking it. Like, again, anything 1,300 plus, you can send that just about anywhere. My girl, check out the video I made about Claudia and Alba who got into Columbia. Seriously, all of you, if you're seriously thinking about top schools, go watch the videos. Go look at what I've talked about here. I've explained so much about this stuff. Like, Claudia and Alba both got in to Columbia with full ride scholarships. I think Claudia had like 1370 or 1380 on her SAT. I think Alba was like around the same place. I think she had like 1400 maybe. But that just goes to show you, like, and neither of them had IB. They just had 11 years of Peruvian education, guys. Like, they didn't have an amazing academic rigor. But you know what they had? They had an amazing personality. They had incredible maturity for their age. They had passions and clear goals and determination. And just like, they're the kind of people you want to be around because they care about the right things. They were not obsessing over their SAT scores. They weren't like, they didn't even think they were going to get into Columbia. They were both like, if I do, it's great, but I probably won't, whatever. They were humble and realistic about this whole process. They were super content to go to a bunch of other universities that they applied to, even like mid-tier public schools. They were just happy to get a better education than they could get in Peru. And because of that attitude, I'm telling you now, they got in. It had nothing to do with their SAT. It had nothing to do with their academics, because at those universities, everybody has good SAT. Everybody has good academics. What makes you different is you. You have to know yourself. You have to believe in yourself. You have to know who you are. If you're not confident in being yourself, if you don't know what that means, that's why you're not going to get in. Like I can tell you right now, they don't want people who still are just like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. Like they want people that know what they're doing and believe in themselves and are comfortable being themselves. People who aren't trying to impress the school. People who just show up to the interview as if it's a normal conversation. They're like, whatever, if I get in, great. If not, whatever. But I want to be me. I want to be myself. And I'm not going to pretend to be someone else just to get into some college, because then I'm going to have to pretend forever. I don't want to pretend. I want to be me. So I'm going to be me in my essays. I'm going to be me in my interviews. And if you don't like it, fine. I don't go to that college then, because I don't want to go somewhere where I'm not going to be myself. That was the mentality that those girls had. And that is the mentality that I see in the ones that tend to get into those high-end colleges. Like if you make your whole life about getting into a top school and everything you do is about that, that becomes who you are. And that's honestly not attractive to the colleges. Like they want someone who's unique. There's millions of people on the planet whose personality can be summed up as Ivy League hopeful. Like there's so many people who've dedicated their entire school career to getting into Ivy League schools, who've made everything about getting into college, who haven't actually done anything for themselves, but have just done it to make their parents happy or because they think they need to get into a top school. And at the end of the day, there's not much else inside a lot of those people. They haven't actually developed their own personality. Their personality is just Ivy League simp. Like that's what it is. So please don't be those people. Okay, please. I've worked with those people too. And honestly, most of them come off as arrogant. Most of them come off as way out of touch with reality. And I can tell you right now, I won't say names. I don't want to make anyone feel bad. But there are people like this that we're working with in SCORE that just don't understand it. And I've tried to explain it to them and they don't get it. Like they think that they are God's gift to the earth and that they deserve to get into these top schools because of everything they've done. And that's because in their minds, that's why they did all these things. I did all these things to get into college. You must admit me. They're not going to get in. I know it now. I know they're not going to get into those top schools because they've lived their whole life just to get into a top school. The irony. Like, trying hard hard work is good. Being a total tryhard is not actually. Like being real, being honest. I'm telling you right now. So, I don't know. That's what it is. But, yo, Sean, if you get 1,300, what's the next step? The next step is apply early, write your essays, do all the things that I'm telling you to do in the channel. And again, you don't need a 1,300 to get into college. You can do all sorts of things. So, yeah, I don't know. Thought I'd give you that little speech for you to think about it. So, anyway, been a great time with all of you. Thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure. Love streaming with all of you. I'm going to definitely do more of these in the next couple months as we work on other application parts and things. So please come back and hopefully I'll see you soon. All right. Have a good day.